So hey guys, so I'm going to be responding to a slightly different video today. This is a video that Pigeon Speaks put out a while ago. It kind of shows the other side of the horseshoe when it comes to transgender people. Now, I'm under the belief that blatantly transphobic far right-wingers and transgenders actually have a similar approach when it comes to transgender people. They both don't understand what transgender is. Right-wing transphobes think that being transgender is a choice, and, they don't understand it. They don't understand its actual medical condition. And it's a similar thing with transgenders. They, again, don't understand what it means to be trans, and they're kind of scared of it, so they think that the only way that they can not be scared of it is to become it. And they obviously think it's a choice, too, because they always mention how they chose to be transgender. Now, to be fair, Pigeon Speaks isn't quite as popular as the transgenders are. He only has about 140,000 subscribers. A lot of these transgenders have 200,000 or 300,000 subscribers. What I'm afraid of, as the SJW movement becomes less popular, which hopefully it will soon, the far-right stuff will become more popular. And people with views like Pigeon Speaks will be taken more seriously. And Pigeon Speaks is just, from what I've seen on his videos, basically a right-wing SJW. He just spews pure propaganda. Like, he did this whole video series about how women are ruining society. He's like, oh, it's not controversial if you watch the end of the video. And then when you do watch the end of the video, he's still saying that women are ruining society, saying like there's something inherent about femininity that makes it bad. And then he did that whole video about how porn is bad. And it's just like it's all this ridiculous, crazy stuff. But like I said, I'm afraid that his sorts of narrative, the narrative that transgender people are delusional and that transitioning is not the treatment for them, it might become more popular. And I understand that more and more people are understanding what it actually means. Like Hunter Avalon, for example. He did that whole video, The Truth About Transgenders, and then I saw in a recent video of his, he's like, oh, my opinions have changed on this. I recognize that transgender is an actual medical condition. So I'm happy that, people are being swayed on this, but there's still always going to be extremists. And like I said, I'm afraid that extremists like Pigeon Speaks are going to become more popular in the next few years. So let's get right into the video. Okay, first of all, the transgender conundrum in 15 minutes. It's not a conundrum. It's not a problem. You're the one who's making it a problem. But I do have to admit, your intro graphics are actually pretty good. Okay, I would agree with you that facts, not ideology, determine reality, but being transgender isn't an ideology. Even though the SJWs have made it look like it is, it's not.
This is Bruce Jenner, an Olympic medal winner and reality TV star, and has been lauded as a hero for transitioning and renaming herself Caitlyn Jenner.
Okay, first of all, with this whole stupid herself, like, if you don't believe that Caitlyn Jenner is transgender, just say he. I mean, that's not true, but if you do believe she's transgender, just say she. Like, why do you have to go with the her thing? You're being intentionally annoying here. And I actually do agree with you that the whole Caitlyn Jenner thing just blew up like crazy. Like, why couldn't they have just said, oh, she's transitioning, and then moved on with it? They just made it into this big sensational media thing. And I think that's part of the reason a lot of transgenders have popped up, because they see transgender as this glorious thing that you should be. But just because there's the whole crazy media thing with Caitlyn Jenner doesn't mean that transgender people don't exist.
He's lauded not only for his determination and his courage, but the controlled media fawns over his new feminine beauty and stunning, sexy, girlish curves.
Something tells me you're a little jealous.
The world is getting to know Caitlyn Jenner this morning.
Caitlyn Jenner stepping out for the first time.
Call me Caitlyn. Call her Caitlyn.
A brave Olympian transformed.
It's really quite, I think, inspiring.
It's very inspirational.
I think he's courageous.
She looks like a movie star.
She looks like Rita Hayworth, so glamorous.
She is stunning.
She looks beautiful.
Wow.
She looks amazing. Look at that. That is a hot woman.
Yes, Caitlyn is hot.
Is like, yeah, sexy boobs.
So sexy it hurts.
Who's hot? You think Caitlyn is actually hotter than Chris?
Okay, I have to ask the most important question. Does she have a better body than Kim Kardashian?
Come on, Black Pigeon Speaks. You know when even news outlets like Fox News and the O'Reilly Factor are okay with this, that something in your head's a little off.
It's been reported in Vanity Fair that Jenner has taken hormones to grow breasts, as well as hair removal and facial surgery. As to whether Jenner has been gelded, well, that's anyone's guess.
I'm assuming you're referring to sex reassignment surgery, in which case, who cares? I mean, unless it's like Milo Stewart or someone who's generally not trans who wants to go through transitioning, then yeah, I'd be worried about it. But otherwise, like, who cares? It's her decision.
As this information has yet to be revealed. This is Jewel Shuping. She's had a fascination with blindness that started in childhood. She would stare at the sun after learning it would damage her eyes, and by 18 she was wearing dark glasses and walking with a cane. Her desire to lose her sight was so strong that she decided to blind herself by having a sympathetic psychologist pour drain cleaner in her eyes. Experts diagnosed her with body integrity identity disorder. Dr. Michael First, the expert who coined the term, said that in the world of psychiatry, cures are rare. Very often, it's about asking how you can make someone's life fulfilling despite their condition.
So this comes in a kind of a gray area. Body integrity identity disorder is an actual condition, and there's neurological evidence to back it up. It's a very rare disorder, but there are some people who, for whatever reason, it's like almost the opposite of having a phantom limb. Like, their limb doesn't feel like it's a part of their body, it feels alien to them, and it is sort of similar to gender dysphoria. I'm not so sure how that applies to blindness, because I've never really heard of that, so I don't know if this legitimately is just a woman who doesn't really have a condition and is trying to get attention, or if she genuinely has a disorder. So I don't really know about that, but
This is Nano, a Norwegian woman that claims she realized she was a cat when she was 16 years old and has adopted feline mannerisms ever since. When asked if she was born as the wrong species, she said yes. Nano prefers to crawl around on her hands and knees and paws at windows when she wants to go outside, and also she said that despite her size, she can sleep in the sink or on windowsills.
So the whole idiotic otherkin thing, which clearly this woman claims she is, has nothing to do with being transgender. It's a Tumblr thing. It's like a special snowflake thing. It has nothing to do with gender dysphoria. So again, why are you bringing this up? I guess he's making the argument like it shouldn't be that you just identify as something, because you could identify as literally anything, which is true when it comes to transgenders who just say they identify as trans, but they're not actually trans. But when it comes to actual transgender people, no, that's an actual condition.
This is Stephanie Walsh, who lived as a man named Paul until he realized he was transgender at the age of 46. He left his wife and 7 children to live as a transgendered 6-year-old named Stephanie. After 2 suicide attempts and a bout of homelessness, he found hope in the transgender community in Toronto. He now resides with an adoptive mommy and daddy and spends his time playing with dolls and the couple's young grandchildren.
Okay, on the whole Stephanie Walsh thing, that man is not transgender. He doesn't have gender dysphoria. You know, when he's been interviewed, it seems like all of the whole 6-year-old girl thing is just a fetish for him. So no, that man is not transgender. He's a creepy, weird, crazy guy who's probably also a child molester. I'm not saying for sure, but he looks a lot like a child molester. Just saying. Again, that has nothing to do with being transgender. He's not transgender.
So what is the difference between these 4 people? Well, obviously a person that intentionally blinds herself and another who believes that she's a cat in a human body would generally be considered mentally ill.
Again, like I said with the blindness thing, there's a gray area there. I don't know if maybe that woman generally has a neurological condition, and I don't know if blinding her would be the best treatment, because it's not quite the same thing as gender dysphoria. But for the other 2 people, yeah, they are nuts, and they don't have a real neurological disorder that needs treatment.
But in contrast, the contemporary controlled media And through osmosis and fear of being called transphobic, Caitlyn and Stephanie are both brave, strong, independent women.
No, Caitlyn Jenner is an actual transgender woman. Quote-unquote Stephanie is a man with a weird fetish. I don't even like Caitlyn Jenner, but she is genuinely trans. And you're talking about how people are scared of being called transphobic. Well, that does happen with SJWs and with transgenders, but when it comes to actual transgender people, and you just don't understand it, you think that's a lifestyle choice or something, yeah, I would say that is kind of transphobic.
That need to be congratulated for finding the courage to transition. And especially Stephanie, who not only lives as a transgender, but also as a 6-year-old girl.
We've been over this. He's not even transgender, and he's definitely not a 6-year-old girl, because that's not an established condition.
Transgender is the T in LGBT and are lumped in with lesbians, gays, and bisexuals, while the L's, G's, and B's communities are mostly concerned with where they put their genitals. The T's are generally concerned with wanting to remove and or change theirs.
Okay, that is actually kind of accurate. I really don't think that transgender people should be grouped in with lesbian, gay, and bisexual people. I've always found that kind of weird, just because they're two completely different issues. But he is accurate in that. But that doesn't do anything to prove his point or anything.
I understand that many see transgender as the last frontier in social justice, and the very concept mobilizes legions of the vacuous at university campuses across the United States.
Only SJWs see it that way. You're conflating actual transgender people with transgender special snowflake SJWs. And honestly, it's kind of hard to blame you considering everything that they've been conflating, and the fact that when you try and research trans issues or any kind of LGBT issues, you always come up with SJW stuff. But that doesn't mean that you should remain confused about transgender people. Actually do some research, dude, and find that it's an actual condition.
Now, those of you listening and grinding your teeth at my intolerance and basking in your own self-righteous, congratulatory, progressive indignation.
No, it has nothing to do with trying to seem progressive or whatever. It's just that what you're saying is incorrect.
Hear me out, which I understand will be hard. The concept of a trans community is the problem here. You can't satisfy a community defined by an identity of mental illness, except by indulging it. There can be no trans community any more than there can be a community of anorexics, or people that cut themselves, or the depressed and manic.
No, that's not true. There are depressed communities, there are anxious communities, because they all try to cope with the disorder together. And that's what being trans is. You're trying to cope with gender dysphoria.
You can have a community of the afflicted, of sufferers looking to overcome their illness. But if you indulge a mental illness as an identity, all you're doing is propagating the illness.
There actually are communities of that. And they're not trying to indulge in their mental illnesses, they're trying to cope with them, like what I said before. And that's exactly what the trans community is, or should be, I should say, because it's been taken over by transgenders.
And being transgender is a mental illness.
I would agree that transgender is a mental illness, but again, it's about coping with that illness. It's not identifying as that illness, it's coping with the illness. Guess what the way to cope with that illness is? Transitioning.
Dr. Paul Mchugh, who is currently Distinguished Service Professor of Psychiatry and former Chief Psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins Hospital, has said that sex changes were biologically impossible, and that those doctors who promote sexual reassignment surgery are collaborating with and promoting a mental disorder.
Okay, two things there. I've heard of this Mchugh guy. All these people who just want to deny that transgender is an actual thing always cite him. And Mchugh does make some valid points. A sex change is biologically impossible. It's a misnomer. You can't change your sex. That is true. But you know what those surgeries do? They help treat gender dysphoria. And the doctors who perform those kind of surgeries are not promoting a mental illness. They're treating it.
Dr. Mchugh, who is the author of 6 books and at least 125 peer-reviewed medical articles, made his remarks in an article in the Wall Street Journal titled "Transgender Surgery Isn't the Solution." He explained that transgender surgery is not the solution for people who suffer a disorder of assumption. The notion that their maleness or femaleness is different than what nature assigned to them biologically.
The reason why there's that quote-unquote assumption, that sense of your brain not matching your body, is because your brain doesn't match your body. There is neurological evidence for this, but no, you're not going to bring that up, are you, Black Pigeon?
While the Obama administration, Hollywood, and major media such as Time magazine promote transgenderism as normal, said Dr. Mchugh, these policymakers and media are doing no favors either to the public or the transgendered by treating their confusions as a right in need of defending rather than a mental disorder that deserves understanding, treatment, and prevention.
Okay, I actually do sort of agree with Mchugh here. Not that many people are trying to promote being transgender as normal. People know that it's abnormal. But I agree that it shouldn't be politicized. It's a condition. It shouldn't be politicized. It does deserve understanding, treatment, and prevention. You know how you treat it? Transitioning.
Dr. Mchugh also pointed out studies from Vanderbilt University and London's Portman Clinic of children who expressed transgender feelings, but for whom, over time, 70 to 80%, in fact, spontaneously lost those feelings.
Okay, the thing you have to understand about this is that these children who he's referring to are prepubescent. So they haven't gone through puberty yet, so they may claim to have some gender dysphoria, but they don't really understand or have the full dysphoria yet because they have not hit puberty. And then yes, once they hit puberty, a lot of them find that they're actually perfectly fine with the puberty they're going to, and they lose those feelings. However, if they're in the minority that still has dysphoria, legitimate gender dysphoria, once they start puberty and after puberty, that's evidence that they are transgender, and that they will remain that way for the rest of their lives. So yes, it's very difficult to tell if a prepubescent child is transgender. However, it's pretty easy to tell if an adolescent or adult is transgender because they have quantifiable gender dysphoria.
Mchugh's views are backed by studies from across the world. For example, a 2011 study from Sweden, which was a long-term follow-up of transsexuals who had underwent sex reassignment surgery, came to pretty much the same conclusions, that post-op transsexuals are more than 20 times likely to commit suicide than the general population.
The way he's presenting this is very misleading. He's saying that transsexuals who have had sex reassignment surgery are 20 times more likely to commit suicide than the general population. But he doesn't look at, he's implying that the sex reassignment surgery makes them more suicidal. He's not taking a look at the people who are pre-op, taking a look at the other factors that would contribute to them being this suicidal. The truth is, being transgender is a horrible condition, and you can never fully get rid of gender dysphoria. You can alleviate it as much as you can, but you can never completely get rid of it because, as Black Pigeon pointed out, a sex change is actually impossible and you can never completely have the body of the opposite sex. But that just doesn't mean that you can't be a lot happier after having surgery, as the vast majority of transgender people report